So putting, in my opinion, is where you're gonna gain the most strokes when you're playing disc golf. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have heard the saying, driving is for show and putting is for dough. And I have seen that play out so many times in my disc golf career, especially in tournaments where me as a 36-year-old will go up against a lot of younger, more limber people who can honestly throw 200 feet further than me. And I've been on holes that are 600 feet and I've seen them land in the circle on their drive and miss their putt, and we get the same score on the hole, even though I only threw 350 feet off the tee and then another 275 and then just made my putt. So while yes, driving really far is really cool to watch and to do, but if you want to lower your score and you want to start playing more confidently, then honestly, putting is the thing that you need to work on. So today we're going to talk about the 3 most important things that I've used to make me a better, more consistent putter. Now, the first of these tips is going to be breathing or pacing. If you guys have watched any of my videos and my putting, you will hear me breathe and even talk about my breathing a lot. I've had people come up to me after tournaments and be like, yeah, the first couple of times you putted, I was like, what is that guy doing? But as you started to putt more, I started to understand it. And so for me, I use that exhale as something to pace my arm. So and then a lot of times if I miss a putt, I can track it back to my breathing. So sometimes I'll do more of a like a exertion of air or whatever because I'm further away. But that makes me end up a lot of times putting nose down because I rush it, and that's kind of what I end up doing. And so my first tip for you guys is honestly go outside, figure out a pace that you like to putt at, and breathe on that pace. So like finish your breath at the end. And obviously you can look at people like Gannon who putt very quickly. That's probably more of a quick exhale. But I would encourage you as you're putting and as you're practicing, work on your breathing. Find a consistent pace that allows you to know what sort of form and what sort of extension and all that kind of stuff you can need. Let me show you a couple examples. All right, so I'm out here at Circle's Edge. This is typically where I practice from. And what I want to say is breathing is only 1/3 of what I'm going to tell you guys. And so it isn't the only thing. Sometimes I'll get my breathing right and I'll get another of the tips incorrect and it'll mess it up. But the breathing is one of the more important things in my opinion because it helps you stay controlled and consistent in your putt. Nice breath. It feels good after you putt, so your whole experience putting is a good one. This doesn't feel rushed or anything like that. Good putt. And then we got another one here. Nice controlled breath. There we go. So all of those, I know this is going to sound really weird, but you have to think about your entire experience when you're putting, because the goal of putting, especially within the circle, is to be confident for the entire round. And a lot of times if you have one bad putting experience within the circle, it can mess up a couple of holes, and then that can kind of set you on another mental journey that you don't want to be on, where you're just not confident in any regard. And so being able to slowly breathe and stay in control is going to be really important for the entire round. Yeah, that one felt really good. Little left on that one, but there's another 3 in from the circle. So there's the breathing. Now, let's talk about the next thing. All right, now, the next tip is going to be nose angle. And yes, this can be somewhat circumstantial to your putting, but for me, this is one of the things that if I'm consistent with, I'm going to have such a better round putting than if I'm not. You will see some people like Gannon and some of the younger, faster putters who come in with it nose down and super powerful. But for me, in my experience with that, the number of times that I hit the cage is way too many. And then hitting the cage for me makes me lose way more confidence than hitting the band does. So if I do have a miss, I would rather it be high, because to me, I know that that meant that I committed, and that's what I'm looking for. So the biggest thing when it comes to your putt and your nose angle is releasing it so that the nose is up like this. I'm not saying throw the disc up because of that nose angle. You can throw the disc forward but have it nose up. So you're not throwing it up, you're throwing it forward but with that nose up. So if you were to go out to your basket and throw the same putt, same speed, same power, everything, and one of them was nose up and one of them was like flat and one of them was a little nose down, that's going to significantly change the consistency of your putt. So if you're struggling to make it to the basket, try experimenting with it being nose up. Now, the next most important thing is going to be stance. One of the biggest things in disc golf is comfort. Not only like comfort in how it feels to throw, but also hand feel. You'll hear people talk about that a lot. So obviously it's important to pick a putter that fits your hand. And then it's also important to pick a putter that has stability that matches your pacing. So if you putt harder, something more stable. If you putt more slow and glidey and floaty, something more understable, like how I used to putt with Keystones or even these Roaches. But the third and final thing we're going to talk about is comfort when you're putting. You kind of want to get loose, get into a good position here. And for me, I like to get in here, and I always do this weird thing with my legs. It kind of like stretches me out and like settles me in. You'll see me do that sometimes. But it's also important to make sure that when you bring your disc down, it doesn't touch your body. Like sometimes if I'm standing right here and I come back and hit my body, I'll have to reset because it really throws me off. So for me, I like to come down. I feel really comfortable here. I always tuck my arm up. I don't know why. You'll see lots of pros do this, but try tucking your arm up in really close and tucking that in, bringing it down. I always say to pause for a second, because if you bring it down and then immediately go back up, sometimes it can like create this weird tension that for me like makes me lose my consistency. So I'll bring it down, we'll putt right in the center, bring it up, tuck in the arm, down. Yep, another good one. Bring it in, tuck it down, pause. Another one, right on the chains. That's what we're talking about. All right, so let's review real quick. Number one is breathing and pacing. I seriously can't iterate this enough. Breathing is so important. You don't have to make it like audible like I do, where I'm like, that's just something that I do to audibly be able to track the pace of my putt. This has been a tip of mine for a very long time. You can start off audibly doing it just to help you track it, and then over time, if you want to be more quiet, you can do that. Breathing for the sake of pacing, number one. Number two, nose up. Incredibly important to be able to get to the basket, especially if you're still kind of trying to figure out your putt. If you have your putt figured out and you like to putt hard and nose down, then don't listen to anything that I'm saying. But if you're someone who's trying to figure out your putt, or maybe you feel like you're leaving a lot of strokes out on the course, then I think it might be important for you to start practicing with a little nose up, try and get it to float towards the basket and just glide on in there and get a little more consistent. Now, another thing that I didn't give a tip on that is very important is where you're aiming. You do not have to aim at the middle of the basket, okay? Doesn't matter what anybody says. You know your putt, and based off your putt, choose your aim point. I aim at the top left chain link. I always do. And my putts typically end in the middle to the right of the basket. I don't know why that is. That's just my putt, and I make a lot of putts, and I'm not looking at the middle of the basket. So learn your putt, learn what feels consistent, and change your aim point based off of that. You don't need to just look at the middle of the basket and change your putt. Find a putt that works and change your aim point. Lastly, stance and comfort. You want to feel comfortable when you're putting. So stand there, figure some things out in the backyard. If something works and feels really comfortable and you find yourself starting to make putts, stop practicing other stuff and stick with that for a while and see if you can make that work. I've probably had 4 different putting styles since I've started playing again, and this one just feels the best as I've gotten better and as I've changed putters and all that kind of stuff. So work on your breathing, work on that nose angle, and then make sure that you're comfortable when you're putting. Now my step putt is pretty interesting. You guys will see me, I kind of look like a flamingo where I pick my foot up and then I go for it. For me, that's just a comfort thing. I want to be prepared. I don't want to have another step in my step putt. I don't want to think about picking up my foot or anything like that. I want to get there, I want to get locked in, and then for me personally, I kind of fall towards the basket. Also, another thing, depending on how far away you are, you don't need to throw it any harder, okay? That's why you're stepping, because it's creating a little more velocity, speed, whatever, towards the basket. So if you're outside the circle and you're gonna step putt, you don't necessarily need to throw it any harder, okay? Just do your normal putt. For me, I get locked in, I get here, I pick up my foot, I bring it in, and then I kind of fall forward and I do my normal putt. Biggest thing for step putting is aiming, okay? Now, my favorite comparison for step putts and everything is if you think about like watching movies where there are snipers, and obviously this is true stuff as well, the bullet is never going any faster. They change their aim point based off of wind and based off of distance. So for me, sometimes I'll throw my putt a little bit harder, but for the most part, I just change my aim point. So sometimes I won't even be looking at the basket. I'll be looking at a tree in the background, and that'll be like a foot or two above the basket, and that's where I aim, knowing that my disc is gonna fall. So you don't always have to throw it harder the further away you are. You can just change your aim point. Let's get some step putts in. All right, so circle's edge is right here. So we're gonna step back to about here. This is probably another 6 feet. So we're looking at close to 40 feet here or so from the basket. For me, the putt stays the exact same. I'm just simply stepping. So if I can do all of those things that I said in my first putt and just add a step to it, then I should be able to make a couple of these. Yeah? Oh, hey, it was committed. It's a little bit high. That's good. Like that was a good solid bid. There it is. So based off of that last one, I just slowed it down just a little bit. Didn't really change my aim point, just barely slowed it down a little bit. Go in. Yeah. Hey, that one counts. There's no pictures on the scorecard, isn't that what they say? So 3 putts there, all from 40 feet. And we just did the same as we do with our normal putt. We're just adding the step, which is giving us that extra distance that we need, okay? So now let's see if we can maybe get 3. So I'm still aiming at my normal putting place right here because I'm not far enough away where I need to change my aim point just yet. So still aiming at that top left chain. Oh yeah, right in there. Y'all can hear the breathing. The breathing is still good and consistent. Ah, that one felt weird. That one came out of my hand weird. I knew immediately that I'd missed that one. I stand up really straight and balance on my leg. Yeah? Nice. Another 2 out of 3, which honestly, y'all, if we can do that in any given round, that's gonna give us strokes on the field. Like let's say that we land outside the circle 3 times. We make 2 of those, that's gonna give us a very big advantage over the rest of the field. See if we can do it again. Yeah, settle in. Nice. So even though that was just a little bit right, that still made it. Another one, nice. Now let's get this last one in. We're still trying to stay consistent with our breathing and everything. All about comfort too. Yes. Oh, it stayed in. That one was just a little bit short. And honestly, if I think about it, I don't think that I breathed as fully there, which didn't give me that full pace and that full extension that I was looking for. All right, I hope you guys were able to learn something that can hopefully help you with your putting if it's kind of felt off. Yeah, try all those things. Hopefully they can work for you. And again, as you're in your backyard, kind of feel something that's comfortable, that you feel like you can be consistent with. And then don't get distracted with other things. Try and dial it in and start feeling comfortable with something. Thank you guys for watching and hanging out. See you on the next one.